Hi fellow logicians, welcome to the Logical Christ channel where we evaluate logical argument that would help us apply logic to arguments presented. Now, here's the logical argument we will evaluate. Premise 1, prostitution in any form is immoral. Premise 2, Prophet Muhammad encouraged to do Mut'ah. Conclusion, therefore, Prophet Muhammad promotes immorality. Sit back and relax, we will be back after this short intro. Here again the logical argument. Premise 1, prostitution in any form is immoral. Premise 2, Prophet Muhammad encouraged to do Mut'ah. Conclusion, therefore, Prophet Muhammad promotes immorality. This premise is a widely held ethical stance across various cultures and religions, including mainstream interpretations of Islam. Prostitution is often associated with exploitation, commodification of sex, and lack of commitment. Here's a clip that Islam condemns the practice of prostitution.
Without doubt, fornication and adultery is one of the heinous and major sins in Islam. And Allah Azza wa Jal associated zina with shirk and murder, as in Surah Al-Furqan. However, the punishment differs. So if a person fornicates, this means that he is not married and was not married before. And this is sort of called in Islam as a virgin. So a man or a woman who has not married in their life, they're considered to be virgins. Even if they committed adultery or fornication many times, still, they're still classified as virgin. Because in Islam we have virgin and we have thayyib. A thayyib is a woman, usually a person, who is either married, has been married, whether divorced, widowed, or still married. He's considered to be a thayyib. In Islam, if a virgin commits fornication and that person, he or she, are caught or is caught red-handed, and red-handed means that 4 male Muslim witnesses saw the actual act and they can graphically describe what they had seen, specifically in detail. Or a person confesses. So it's one of the two. We don't refer to DNA. We don't believe in video footage. It has to be 4 eyewitnesses, male and Muslims, or a confession. So if a person was caught red-handed, his punishment would be to be flogged 100 lashes. And this is only for a virgin. But if a person is not a virgin, a person is a thayyib, someone who is married or was previously married, divorced or widowed, then this person, if he or she commits adultery, the punishment, if caught red-handed, again with 4 witnesses or a confession, is to be stoned till death.
Now for premise 2 argument. This premise is widely debated among Muslims, but upon a closer look, in Surah An-Nisa 4:24-25, Prophet Muhammad did allow his followers to do Mut'ah. To understand what Mut'ah is, here's a clip that explains it.
It's a contract between a man and a woman to have sex for a specific period of time in exchange of a specific amount of money. Once the contract is over, there's no need to divorce, Once the time lapses and ends, there's no need for divorce. There's no need for anything. They just split and they move on. Nowadays, this is considered to be another form of fornication or adultery. It's zina. The contract is invalid and the marriage is invalid. And the children are most likely, if there were children, because usually the agreement is not to have children, are born out of wedlock. And a woman in such a marriage is like a prostitute. She moves from one man to the other because it's a fixed contract, a day or two, a week or two, and then it's ended.
Many Muslims even admitted that Mut'ah can be understood as legal prostitution,
is that it opens the way for halal prostitution, right? A woman can make a living out of that. She can enter into a legal marriage verbal contract with any number of men, charge even money for it, which, by the way, she will get something, because in Islamic law there must be a dowry. So automatically she's going to get something, financial compensation, or she can demand what she wants. And so what's the difference between that and prostitution?
From Islamic sources, Prophet Muhammad even encouraged his companions to do a Mut'ah. The following clip entails what happened that time.
Another hadith here, this was interesting. It's from Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari. Jabir ibn Abdullah states, أهل النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وأصحابه هو وأصحابه بالحج. The Prophet, along with his companions, they went for the Hajj. وليس مع أحد منهم هدي غير النبي. None of them had a animal with them, like a sheep or a camel, except who? The Prophet. وطلحة also. Talha also had, an animal with him for sacrificing at the Hajj. Now, what does it make a difference if you're taking an animal with you to the Hajj? If you take an animal with you to the Hajj, you have to do Hajj al-Qiran. That means you don't fully become lawful from your acts until you finish the Hajj. So there is no Mut'ah in between that's allowed. Whereas if you don't bring the hadi with you, if you don't bring the animal with you, you could do Hajj al-Tamattu'. And in that case, there is the Mut'ah of the Hajj. وَقَدِمَ عَلِيٌّ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ مِنَ الْيَمَنِ وَمَعَهُ هَدْيٌ. Imam Ali had just returned from Yemen. The Prophet had dispatched him to go to Yemen. He just returned from Yemen and he was having an animal with him. Now, what type of Hajj did Imam Ali do? Is he going to do Tamattu' or Qiran? Imam Ali didn't say. He said, أَهْلَلْتُ بِمَا أَهَلَّ بِهِ النَّبِي. My niyyah is whatever the Prophet's niyyah is. If his niyyah is Qiran, I'm doing Qiran. If his niyyah is Tamattu', I'm doing Tamattu'. This is how Imam Ali worded his niyyah. فأمر النبي صلى الله عليه وآله أصحابه أن يجعلوها عمرة. The Prophet told his companions, now that you don't have an animal with you, do your umrah first. ويطوفوا, do the tawaf, finish your a'mal. ويقصروا, ثم يقصروا, you do the taqsir. ويحلوا, and then you're fully halal. Now you can do the mut'ah.
Following the arguments, we can logically accept the conclusion that based on evidence from Islamic sources, Prophet Muhammad promotes immorality. Here is another spin of the same logical argument. Premise 1, Mut'ah is a form of prostitution. Premise 2, Prophet Muhammad allowed Mut'ah. Conclusion, therefore, Prophet Muhammad promoted prostitution. Here's a clip where David would expand at this topic.
In Islam, situations arose where, talking about the early history of Islam, when Muhammad's around, situations arose where Muslims were, off campaigning and fighting wars, and they were away from their wives, and they came to Muhammad and said, "Hey, what are we going to do? Or should we castrate ourselves? We're away from our wives. We're losing our minds here." And Muhammad allowed them to to do what's called Mut'ah, or temporary marriage. So temporary marriage is, it's just prostitution, but you might call it halal prostitution, right?
Yeah, and I want to say the word in Arabic, mut'ah, means pleasure. I mean, if that tells you anything.
So, the temporary marriage is if you want to have sex with a prostitute, you just pay that woman to marry you for an hour or a few hours or a day or a few days or something like that, whatever you guys agree to in the contract. So you pay her, she marries you for the time that you want to have pleasure with her, and then everything's okay with Allah. So notice it's the same thing as prostitution. You just get married for the duration of that, and then everything's fine.
Sounds like a legalized prostitution.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So, here's the situation. In the Muslim sources, Shias still allow Mut'ah marriage, and you find this happening all the time in Shia areas. But Sunnis, in the Sunni sources, there's a bit of inconsistency. Some of the Sunni sources, in their top sources, their top sources are inconsistent. Some of the sources say that, all the sources agree that Muhammad allowed it for a while.
That's right.
Some of the sources say that Muhammad eventually forbade the practice. He eventually said, no more Mut'ah. But other passages in those same sources say, no, it wasn't Muhammad who forbade the practice. It was one of the caliphs, and then basically people started saying that Muhammad forbade it in order to do away with it. Let's look at one passage from Sahih al-Bukhari. This is Sahih al-Bukhari 5075. We used to participate in the holy battles led by Allah's messenger, and we had nothing, no wives with us. So we said, shall we get ourselves castrated? He forbade us that, and then allowed us to marry a woman temporarily by giving her even a garment. And then he recited to us, O you who believe, make not unlawful the good things which Allah has made lawful for you. And this kind of this passage kind of makes it difficult for people to say decisively that Muhammad forbade Mut'ah, because basically if you have some passages in the hadith saying that Muhammad eventually forbade Mut'ah, but you have other passages saying, no, it wasn't Muhammad, it was one of the later caliphs. Well, Muhammad specifically says in this hadith, when he was allowing Mut'ah, don't forbid yourself what God has allowed.
Right.
And he's talking specifically about Mut'ah, which would mean that one of the later caliphs would have no right to say, hey, you can't do that anymore.
And the context, David, is like, he's talking about, at worst, at best case scenario, he's talking about sleeping, with women. You can't say, marriage in this case, because it's temporary. So there is no commitment here in terms of a real long-term marriage, technically speaking. So he's justifying to these men how they can satisfy their basically sexual desires.
And that's kind of the moral issue that we wanted to draw attention to. One, it's prostitution, which here is what are they actually doing? They're saying, hey, I want to rent your body. I want to rent your body for a few hours to satisfy myself sexually using your body, and I'm going to give you something. And in the passage we just read, he said we would give her a garment, right? So, we have the spoils of war, something like that. We got an extra coat laying around. Hey, I'll give you this coat to be my wife for the next 2 days. And I'm gonna have a bunch of sex with you, and then I'm gonna give you the coat in exchange. We have other Muslim sources that say they would give her like a handful of flour, so you'd be able to bake yourself a loaf of bread. That's what your body is worth to me. I'm gonna use your body, and I'm gonna give you enough for a loaf of bread. And so this was perfectly acceptable. So there's no disagreement that Muhammad allowed his followers to hire prostitutes for this temporary marriage practice. The only disagreement is whether he was the one who forbade it or one of the later caliphs forbade it, and then the Shias don't even have that problem.
That's right.
They still allow it. So notice what this does is, if you want to practice Mut'ah, if a Muslim in Saudi Arabia, if a Muslim sheikh in Saudi Arabia wants to practice Mut'ah, he can just say, nope, I've got all these hadiths right here that say it wasn't Muhammad, it was one of the later caliphs who did it, and so I'm going to believe these. And Muhammad himself used the Quran to say, don't allow anyone to forbid you what Allah has allowed, and so I'm going to keep practicing Mut'ah. I'm going to believe these hadiths. And if you find the practice reprehensible, Then you could go to the hadiths that say Muhammad forbade it, and you say, oh, okay, so maybe he allowed it for a little period of time, but then he eventually forbade it. Which, I mean, gosh, why are you allowing it for for a while, right?
Exactly. I mean, what's the point? Is it just for that battle only? How come it didn't specifically say that?
Yeah, and I mean, think about the reason a Muslim would say, oh, it was just allowed for a short period of time. You could say, well, things were so bad right there that Muhammad had to allow it. Well, how is that different from any other later wars after Muhammad? So why would that not be a practice that continues? But the moral issue here is, again, that Muhammad was allowing his followers to pay women to use the woman's body, not for any sort of long-term commitment, but just to satisfy themselves, and then paying the women for the use of their body.
Finally, after our evaluation of the premises, we have a solid logical argument that Premise 1, Mut'ah is a form of prostitution. Premise 2, Prophet Muhammad allowed Mut'ah. Conclusion, therefore, Prophet Muhammad promoted prostitution. What do you think, my fellow logicians? Comment down below.
Thinking with Logical Christ.